Thank you very much, Amanda, and it's a pleasure being here with you. First, I would like to say that the moment that we are going through nowadays, it is very complex. It is a world that has brought in uncertainty and volatility of these events, and it is a risk of uncertainty. But it is important to have in mind that one of the most important elements to keep in mind is we have saw what Damien mentioned in terms of the islands, what happens in Central America and even in South America among smaller and larger countries. It is important to take into consideration because there is not going to be only one solution to solve the problems in the region by the president. And second, what we have seen with COVID-19 is that the limitations and the problems that we had structurally, they continue and they were exacerbated because of the COVID-19 unexpected impact. And the poverty increased a lot, hunger increased, inequality was exacerbated. And many of these things happened because there were some central drivers that we had not taken into consideration. And one of them is the informality. If we want to find a common problem in the region, that would be informality. And it has not been solved. We have more than 50% of informality in the region, and this is linked to low production, a sector that has no resiliency, no mechanism from the government to support them, and automatically receiving a shock as that of COVID-19, it will fall into poverty, and that's what we have seen. And a second subject that is extremely important is that this is a region that is going to have different vulnerabilities, and it is a climate change, and the needs are going to be different. Climate change will affect in 4 ways. First, because we'll have extreme temperatures, extreme water levels, and there is also going to be volatility, which will make decision making more difficult. And also there is going to be a change in the way that diseases evolve because of climate change, and that will have different intensities depending on the regions. As it was mentioned, in the islands, they are going to be affected negatively, the entire country, and in other areas, important zones will be affected that will affect the development of the region. So it is important to take into consideration that vulnerability, that heterogeneity, and that problems with informality that are very common along the region. So I think it's important to have a strategy, because the IDB needs to have a clear strategy, and we need to guide the region and departments because they should not operate individually. They should operate in an alliance with other banks, and we need to have a strategy for resiliency. And there are 3 components. The first is prevention with early alert and also to be able to cope and to be able to build and build better. So I think it's important for all the problems that we're going to face, climate change, water stress, that it is a fundamental problem, food insecurity that are so serious right now. It is important to have a strategy that will take us to increase the resiliency, capturing those heterogeneities in all the region, and also working with our partners in that direction. The region had several areas where it has been good, for example, in social protection. This is one of the regions that had more development in several institutions for social protection, but we need to innovate more. We need to have accelerators for innovation and to bring new mechanisms to reduce informality and to manage those who enter into social protection, and also to better the education systems because of COVID-19. And the only way to do it is being efficient, and that requires a clear strategy with clear objectives and to have different intensities depending on the part of the region we're talking about, with partnerships, with cooperation with other regions, because by themselves they're not going to do it. And also to have a clear objectives and accountability to move the region ahead. So the cost in capital is very high, and the countries are already in debt, and it is very difficult for them to cover this new cost of capital. And the design of the IDV and the clause with the function was to work with the public and private sector, and this is not new. This was there in the first day when the IDV was created on how to capitalize. So this, I think this is a way of financial innovation, and we need to accelerate this to reduce that capital cost that would be so high.
I would like to follow up on what Damien said. It is important to see the context. It was better than what? Without social protection or with a social protection system that is more focused? Because if we take apart what happened in Brazil, where the money that was given to people were doubled, the situation was not good as if it had been focalized. Including Brazil, we see that poverty has gone up, and extreme poverty too. So that means that the program was not necessarily well focused in this middle class, informal class. So there's a lot that we need to learn. In each crisis, there's something to learn, and there's a lot to learn of what happened and how we can improve. I wouldn't say that it was the most efficient thing that we could have done. I see it through the experience in my country and other countries that are similar, where a lot of the resources were not used efficiently and appropriately, and that meant more stress because we didn't update the patterns of social protection. And a second thing, and I will end it here, is that we have to take into account, and I will talk about education, which I think is central, and the gap in education, high school and primary education. We've lost 2 years of school. These are important issues, and also nutrition. In terms of global COVID-19, we have, in 2 years, we've had a changing situation in terms of health and nutrition, and that has durable consequences. So we need to deal with this thing. We need to strengthen this, because that has been a concept that is taken into account to deal with those sectors. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to deal with health, with climate change, and any other thing that was affected by this process.
Okay, so
yes, I believe that one of the most important experiences was ISC. With the replenishment of ISC, that was used to locating, de-risking with low risk, Peru and other parts of Latin America, and then it was asked to go to Africa, where these countries are very complex and very risky, and it's very difficult to get the same level of investment from the private sector to those areas. And why am I mentioning this? Because I just came back from a seminar to attract the private sector to vulnerable countries, and one of the things that we found out is that if there's a pre-investment and you make it easier for the private sector to identify the areas, they will be willing to take that larger risk, so that you will be able to have biddings and you can go to zero. And that happened a lot, rural communication. So it's important to have a clear strategy of how you're going to be using the money to attract those investors. Andres?
Oh, thank you so much. 3 things. First, we need to have a clear strategy. And for that, we need to have the best possible president. And it needs to be a person who is totally qualified, and they should have a strategy to work with the teams. And second, the world is totally interconnected. We cannot think about this region by itself. To prevent risk, we need to reduce the risks, and that is important to work with the Global Bank. And we need to work with intelligence and scientific evidence, and we need to have partners that are integrated with the IDV, so this strategy can be implemented. And to end, I think that the concessional part is important because we need to keep that concept of cooperation, but we need to do it well and we need to see what will be the returns on those loans. Thank you.